Hello everyone and welcome back to another tutorial. In this tutorial, we are going to study about the curved graphs. The curved graphs are all type of graphs other than the straight line graphs. How do we plot the curved graphs? And that is by completing the table of values. So if the x values are given to us here, and then we have to fill in the y values by putting these x values in the equation. So if x is -1, we have to put this -1 in this equation in place of x, and we have to find the values of y. And that would be y is equal to x square. So -1 square is +1. So -1 times -1 is +1 minus and 2, and then we put -1 and then -4. So this gives us negative and negative again positive. So +3, -4 gives us -1. So if x is -1, y is also -1. In the same way, we put 2 in this equation. That gives us 4 minus 2 2's are 4 minus 4. And this cancel out. So we are left with -4. And we put x is a +4, then that gives us 4 fours are 16, minus 2 fours are 8, minus 4, and that gives us 8 plus 4 is 12, and that gives us +4. So these are our values. So now we have to plot these values, and when the x is -2, y is po +4. So -2 is here and +4 is here. So we just find this point here. This is the point. This is our first point, and the second point is -1 and -1. So when the x is -1 and y is also -1. So this is the point. And the third point is x is 0 and y is 4. So x is 0 and y is -4. This is the point. And if you see in the equation here, this is -4. So the equation of a quadratic line is y is equal to ax square plus bx plus c, and c is the y-intercept. So otherwise we know that the y-intercept is -4, that the line should cross y-axis in -4. And the next point is 1 and -5. So 1 and -5 is here, and then the next point with us is 2 and -4. Now graph is curling towards upside. 2 and -4 is here and 2 there. And the next point with us is 3 and -1. 3 and -1. And the next point with us is 4 and 4. So x and y both sides it's 4. So now these are the points with us. So we just connect these points through a smooth line. So this is a curved graph which we obtain out of these. So we had been given some of the values and we just fill some of them. And if we have not been given the values, then we have to fill ourselves all these values. Now I go to the next question, and in this question, it's also similar kind of question. And here, this is also a quadratic equation where it's y is equal to x squared plus x. And here we can see that there's no there's no y-intercept. So that means that the graph should pass through this 0 point. So it should pass through this 0 point, and it's x square. So uh, the square term, the quadratic term is positive. So when it's a positive, then it comes from up and then goes down and then again it comes up. So like this, the graph shape should be like this. So if this x square value is negative, if for example negative x square, then the graph should look like this. It should start from down, go up to up, and then come again down. So you should differentiate between these two types of graphs. Okay, so the next question is again a similar kind of question where the y-intercept is -3. So this shows that the graph is a positive one, and the graph is a positive. The x square value is positive here, so the graph should come up, and the y-intercept should be at -3 here. So it should come in -3 and then it should go up. And in this question, it's x cube. So this is the first question with the x cube. So this is cube. So we are going to solve this kind of question now. We have to put the values from -2 to +2. And first value we put -2 here. So when we put a -2 in place of x in this equation, -2 cube plus -2 and then -2. So -2 cube means -2 times -2 times -2. So if you three times multiply -2 with itself, the sign is negative, and 2 twos are 4, 4 twos are 8, so it is -8. And then here positive times negative is -2 and -2, so this gives us -12. So this will give us -12. So in the same way, now we have to put -1 in place of x. So it will give us -1, -1, -2, and that will give us -4. And if we put 0 in place of these two, so the x's become 0, and only we are left with -2. And when if we put a positive 1 here, so 1 plus 1 and then -2, so 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 minus 2 is 2, so it's 0 here. And then if we put 2 here, then it will be +8, +2, and then -2. So these negative positive cancel and it will be 8. So we have to plot these values. So -2 and -12. The first point is on the x-axis -2 and -12. So this is the point, first point. And the second point is -1 and -4. With -1 and -4 is this point on the y-axis, and the third point is 0 and -2. So on the x-axis it's 0, and on the y-axis it's -2. So it should be here in the middle from 0 to 4. And the next point is 1 and 0. So on the x-axis it should be 1, and on the y-axis it should be 0. This is the point where on the x-axis it's a 1 and y-axis it's a 0, and then 2 and 8. So uh, on x-axis it's 2 and on y-axis it's 8. So the cubic graph, if you see, then you have to just match these lines. No, not like this. So from here it goes up like this. So this is a cubic graphs, and the cubic graphs, there's some characteristics. So you have to look for this -2, or the cubic graphs would be y is equal to ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d, right? So this kind of graphs would be there, and this d, which is uh, here without the value of any variable such as x, uh, or any unknown variable, this is the y-intercept. So we see here this graph is on the y-axis, it is passing at the point -2. So it is intercepting, it is the y-intercept. And another important information is this the sign of the cubic. So the sign, if the cubic one, the variable of cubic, has a positive sign, then the graph would be in these two quadrants, right? So it will be in this type of graph where it will go up from here, and then maybe it can come down, and then again it will go up. So in these two quadrants the graph would be just like a straight line graph is like this, and a positive straight line graph is like this, and a negative straight line graph is like this. So in the same way, if this x value is negative, for example negative x cube, then the graph would first come down like this, and then go a little up, and then go again down. Cubic graph near to the zero, when you are close to this 0 point, so the x and y values are almost same. So if you see here in this also, close to the 0, the x and y values are almost same. And when you go away from 0 on both sides, the values are increasing very unproportionately. Like you see 2 and 8, -2 and -12. So this shows that if you move away from the 0, the values in a cubic graph, they move very exponentially. So there is exponential rise in values when you move away from 0. And when you are close to 0, there's not much change. So that's why the cubic graphs are little constant, you can say, along this 0, and then move very exponentially up or exponentially down. Okay, so the next kind of graph is the inverse graph. So the inverse graphs are those graphs in which the x is in denominator. So it can be y is equal to 1 over x, or y can be any number like this. In this equation, it's 6 over x. So you have to put the values here, and then you can find the value of x in the same way. So if we put the value here, zero point 0.5, right? So we have to use a calculator here over. So the first value is zero point 0.5. So what we do is y is equal to, we place in place of this x, zero point 0.5. So 6 divided by 0.5, this gives us 12. So our first value is 12, and the second value, if we divide 6 by 1, it will definitely give us 1. Okay, so in the next one we divide 6 by 1.5, it should give us 4. And when we divide 6 by 2, it should give us 3. And when we divide 6 by 3, it should give us 4. And when we divide 6 by over 4, it should give us 1.5. And when we divide 5, 6 divided by 5, it should give us 1.2, and 6 divided by 1, 6 is 1. So these are our values, and we plot these values and see how does these values behave. So when x is zero point 0.5, y is 12. So when x is zero point 0.5, so zero point 0.5 is in middle. So when the x is here and the y value is in 12. So our first point is somewhere here. And the next, if x is 1, y is 6. So this is our second point. And when x is 1.5, y is 4. 1.5 and y is 4. 4 at this place. And when x is 2, y is 3. When x is 2, y here. And the next one is 4 on the x and 1.5. 4 on the x and 1.5 should be here. And the next one is 5 and 1.2. 5 and 1.2 should be here. And then 6 and 1. So 6 and 1. So now how does this type of graph happens is uh, here we see that this type of graph, if we just try to plot this graph, so the inverse graph moves like this, and it never touches the y-axis or the axis, and it moves close to the infinity, but it does not touch. So if the values are negative, so these will be on the opposite quadrant, and they will also move like this. So what is the impact of the numerator number is that if the numerator number is smaller, then the values will move close to the axis. For example, if the graph is 1 over x, the number is just 1 here in the numerator. So in that case, the graph may just move like this, close to the axis. And then it never touches these x-axis. It keeps on moving in the same. And if the value in numerator is more, so there will be more distance from the axis towards the graph. So if there is 100 over x, 100 divided by x, maybe that graph moves like this, but the shape of the graph would be similar. Okay, so in the next question, this is also a kind of inverse, and it has a one inverse and linear both functions. So let's see how does this kind of graph works. So the method is the same. So if its first value is zero point 0.2, then you have to put the value of zero point 0.2 plus 1 over zero point 0.2 and find all these values, and you have to plot. But I will not waste time in plotting this one. I'll straight away go to the next kind of graph where you can recognize by the shapes. So these are the type of graphs which you have to recognize and then write the values here. So write down the letter of the graph that could have the equation. So here are the graphs which are here. So keeping looking at these graphs, we have to guess that what can be the equation, what can be the equation of that graph. So the first with us is y is equal to 3x minus 2. So what this equation shows us, y is equal to mx plus c. So the c means that it's a straight line graph because the value of x is 1 here. So the power of x is 1. That shows that this graph is a straight line graph. So this is the first finding. And the second finding is that it is crossing the y-axis in negative 2. So we should look for the graphs which are a straight line and that is a positive line as well. We see positive 3x, positive 3x. This shows that it's a positive line and this line is crossing y-axis in negative 2. So out of all these options, we see the straight line graph. This is a straight line graph, but it's also below in the negative region. This is also in the negative region. Maybe it's negative 2, but the line is negative 1. This is not the positive. So the positive line should be like this. So we should look for the next one, and this one is also a negative one. We need a positive straight line, so this is also a not the one. And this option we see, so this is a positive line and this line is crossing y-axis in the negative zone below just this axis. So that shows that this h is our correct option. So what we do is we write here h. So for the second question, it is 2x square minus 5x minus 3. So in this question, we can see the equation of this kind of quadratic equation can be, the general equation can be ax square plus bx plus c, right? So in this, the c is the y-intercept negative 3. This is one finding. And the second one is 2x square. The square term, the highest term is positive. So it's plus 2x square. So this shows that it's a quadratic equation, quadratic graph, and the quadratic graph starts from top, goes down to negative, it crosses at the negative 3 and then again goes up. So the quadratic graphs here, this is a quadratic graph, but this quadratic graph is a negative one because it goes from down, goes up, and then again comes down. So this type of shape, the N shape or U shape. So these both N and U shapes are quadratics. So these are quadratic graphs, N and U shape. So the N shape is a negative one and U shape is the positive one. So this one is a U shape, this is a quadratic, but we have to see that it's a positive one. Does it cross y-axis as negative 3? Yes, it does cross at the negative 3, whereas this is another quadratic, but it cross in the positive area of the y, maybe at positive 1 or something above the 0. So this is above the 0. That means this is our correct option, D. So the correct option is D. And the third one is y is equal to 3 over x. So the 3 over x shows that this is an inverse graph. So it's an inverse graph where it is something over x. So the inverse graph, and in numerator it's 3. So it's a positive inverse graph. So when it's a positive inverse graph, it should be here, right? So the positive inverse graph should be here and here. So, and we can see that there is some distance from the axis to the graph, so that it shows that it's not 1 over x. So if it was 1 over x, it would have been just closer to this one. So that means this one is, you can just imagine, 3 over x, and it's a positive 3 over x. Uh, there is no more this type of graphs. But if it was negative 3 over x, the graph would have been like this here, like this. So the negative one towards be in this zone, and the positive ones should be in this zone. So the answer for the next question is A. So if we see here the equation of this line, this is a cubic graph, and it's a positive cubic graph which has a y-intercept is a positive 1 or a positive 2. So it is a positive value of x cube. It should have a positive value of x cube, and the y-intercept d is in also positive. So these should be indications if there's an equation for you to judge them. So if it was a negative x cube, then the equation would be just like this. And if the y-intercept was also negative, then it should have crossed the y-axis here like this. So thank you very much for watching this video. And in this video, we studied about curved graphs, and the type of curved graphs are uh, so there are basically couple of curved graphs. Those are inverse graphs, right? So inverse graphs are also curved graphs, and their equation is 1 over x. Y is equal to 1 over x or any number over x, and the shape would be either they would be here like this, or they would be like these ones. So if they are positive, they would be here like these ones, and if they are negative, they would be like these ones. And the next is quadratic graphs. Quadratic graphs, and the equation of quadratic graphs would be y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c, and the quadratic graphs would look like either a U shape or N shape. So the positive x square values would have a U shape, and the negative x square values, negative ax square, they will have a N shape values. And the third type is cubic graph. So the third type was cubic graphs, and in the cubic graphs, the general equation would be y is equal to ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d, where d is the y-intercept, and you should look at whether this ax cube value is positive or a negative. So if it's positive ax cube, then the graph would be like this, and if it's a negative ax cube value, so it would be like this. So these are the means through which you can recognize different type of graphs. And the straight line graphs are, of course, those are pretty simple. They are either like this or they are like this, right? So this one is negative straight line graph, and this one is positive straight line graph. Why this is positive? Because the values on the x-axis and on the y-axis both increase. So with increase on the x-axis, the values on the y-axis also increase. That's why it's called positive. Whereas in the negative graphs, the one side the values increase, whereas on the other side the values decrease. So that's why they are called negative correlation as well.